10 years ago, we packed this same arena. 10 years ago, we faced the Hospital Restructuring Committee with the same agenda, prepared to treat our community like some kind of village or outpost not deserving of a hospital, rather than the town of 30,000 plus people, the fastest growing community in the region, the terminus of the second busiest border crossing in Canada, which is what we are. I suggest to you that the overall objective for health care in Ontario and the responsibility of the provincial government should be to provide comprehensive, accessible health care in the community on an equitable basis. Let's take a look at how the NHS HIP plan measures up to that objective. The NHS board and administration does not even approach achieving this objective, but it gives lip service to it by filling the HIP report with meaningless platitudes. Comprehensive health care. The NHS HIP plan recommends not merely the reduced hours in our emergency department, which is, I mentioned, the only thing they publish in their ads, but complete closure of the emergency department within 5 years, and complete removal of ambulatory surgery, which would result in the loss of all our clinics. We will not have health care that is in any way comprehensive, and we'll lose our hospital designation and the core services that make the Douglas Memorial Hospital a hospital, which is tantamount to complete closure. This, although numerous studies exist proving the value and cost efficiency of small hospitals in the community. Accessible. The NHS offers the feeble argument that Niagara Falls, Welland, and St. Catharines are accessible. This completely ignores the unique weather patterns we're subject to and the complete lack of a regional transportation system. Ask anyone here about the blizzard of 1977, the ice storm of 1982, the ice storm of October 2006, all of which resulted resulted in the closure of the Peace Bridge, the closure of the Queen Elizabeth Way, in and out of Fort Erie, completely isolating our town. We all know that these communities are not accessible in the sense that any health emergency would require. This conclusion will be supported by the testimony of all our emergency physicians. Let's look at in the community. This one I really like in that report. The NHS plan puts forth a false definition of community, referring to the community of Niagara, and they repeat that over and over. Let me say it clearly. There is no such community. We all know that the region is a collection of very diverse, independent, and somewhat distant communities. The only thing we have in common is a public works system. The NHS only wants to provide service to their own false version of a community, believing if they repeat something often enough, then falsehood would become fact. Equitable basis. At least in respect to Fort Erie, our treatment by the NHS is far from fair. Our emergency doctors are not funded by the NHS, and therefore the cost of our emergency physicians is in no way responsible for the NHS deficit. Yet closure of our emergency is put forth as a cost-saving measure to be replaced by some undefined feel-good creatures called community enablers, who apparently will provide and pay for what will essentially be a first aid station. Whatever community enablers are, they don't exist now and they may never exist. It's just a way of telling Fort Erie to pay for whatever health care you can afford because the NHS isn't going to do it. Maybe we should pay our taxes to the Kinsmen, the Lions Club, or the Optimists. They'd give us better service. As has been previously stated, we receive $7,200,000 less than we should receive to operate the Douglas Memorial Hospital. And now the NHS wants to balance their budget by taking our hospital off their books. So what's the bottom line? The NHS has run this health care train for 8 years. They've run it off the track and they've run it into the ditch. They don't know how to best use the resources they have, and they can't balance their budget no matter how much money the province throws at them. They have a record of not saying what they're doing and not doing what they say. Their 8 years of stewardship has generated an atmosphere of complete mistrust among the people they serve and the doctors that serve them. The only physicians that support their plan are the ones that are on the NHS payroll. And it's this group that produces what is laughingly called a hospital improvement plan, a plan full of flaws, fantasy, and false statistics. A plan that calls for the closure of our hospital's emergency room and the effective closure of the hospital itself. A group that says, oh, there'll be no changes until the plan is approved and perhaps for 5 years, when in fact they have been and are continuing to systematically dismantle, deprive, and destroy our hospital as I speak. And they call these actions day-to-day operations. If any group were the poster children for incompetence, it's the board and administration of the NHS. And you have asked this group for a hospital improvement plan? I suggest it's time to take a long look. Take a long look and give your head a shake, because you're asking the monkeys for advice on how to run the zoo. Finally, the NHS has revealed publicly what has been their agenda for the Douglas Memorial Hospital for the last 8 years. Fort Erie also has an agenda. If this plan is approved, we will continue to fight for our hospital. As the mayor said, we'll not lose our hospital, and we're sure as hell not lose our town. We will fight for our doctors and for the health care we deserve. In 1931, in the middle of the Depression, a town of 5,000 people could build, equipped, fully staff, and fully service a functioning hospital, and do that for 75 years in the black. These people have $315 million, and they can't do it today. There's something wrong with that.